the sound of a 1989 FJ62 giving up on life after 350,000 miles. Yep, she had a real bad knock, but I just kept driving her, probably for the last 50,000 miles. And now, when I went to go pull her out to film the clip that showed how bad she was really knocking, she just gave up on life. You know, no big deal. So what are we gonna do? Well, there's only really one thing to do, and that is put another motor in her and just keep the party going. Now we just need to get her into the frickin' building without a motor. Again? You kidding me? This is such a joke! Well, the struggle of getting this thing inside alone is over. So now it's time to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of what this truck is before we start diving into the motor swap. This is a 1989 FJ62 with a 4-speed manual out of an FJ60 that's been swapped in by somebody else before my time of ownership. It's been a great truck for me. I've owned it for several years, and I bought it before the prices for these trucks just skyrocketed out of control. And because of that, I just didn't really know what I had, and I just enjoyed it. Took it on road trips, made it my daily, recently put a suspension lift on it, and just kept driving it with the knock that just kept on getting worse until it just couldn't take it anymore and blew up. So here's the plan. Let's review that real quick. Well, I've thought long and hard about what I'm gonna be doing with this truck, and honestly, I just concluded V8 swap it, easiest thing. Then I had some sleepless nights and I thought, I'm gonna lose all my subscribers and be banished from the Toyota community. So a couple more sleepless nights later, I came to the conclusion. We're just gonna be putting a healthy 3FE into it for the time being, get it running and driving down the road, you know, pull that old motor out and build a 2FE with it. Top end's good, bottom end's trash. What is a 2FE? That is when you take a 2F from an FJ60, take the block out of it and attach it to a 3FE head and fuel injection system and put them back into the truck. That is building a 2FE stroker, which gives you a little more extra power, bang for your buck, you know what I mean? So we can really just make this thing drivable, you know, enjoy it on some more road trips type of thing, and maybe we just might slap in a 5-speed. So that's what these couple next episodes are gonna be about. So I hope that you're ready for all that stuff, and I'm excited to bring it to you on the channel. So let's get started, let's get that boat anchor out of there. The task now is to get this 3FE on out of here, which shouldn't be too bad and relatively similar to the FJ60s that I've featured on the channel in years past. That's because this is attached to that 4-speed manual transmission. If this was a normal FJ62 with an automatic transmission, you'd have a couple other things to worry about, like the cooler lines that go to the base of the radiator, the torque converter, and so on and so forth. Because those things do not exist, it should make this pretty straightforward and out before lunch. The plan is to butterfly everything off to the fenders, disconnect the actual motor mounts, transmission, and out she comes. I've never done a major job on this truck like this, so I'm just hoping there ain't no Mickey Mouse stuff going on under there, like this bolt that's already giving me so much trouble. I got it. That's that bolt. It just took way too long to get out. If you're gonna do something, do it right the first time. Golly day. While the coolant is still dripping out of the radiator, I want to go over a few things on this side of the engine. One, we have a couple heater lines that will need to be disconnected in order for the motor to come out. This one runs to your heater core, which is under your dash. These two run to your rear heater, which on a 62 is under your center console. So they do need to be disconnected. They're going to be full of coolant as well. Everything else, heater-wise, doesn't really need to be disconnected over here. You can kind of let that stuff go. Moving over to where your AC stuff is, there would be an air box here that needs to come out. That's 12 millimeters, and she comes out. Disconnect your MAF sensor, which is your mass airflow sensor. I went ahead and disconnected my AC lines directly from the compressor and pulled the actual thing completely out with the lines right through this hole right here. A little bit more difficult, but just sometimes those lines can be corroded and it's tough to get off on that side of the AC system. So that's how I've learned to do it. So mine wasn't charged, so just be careful if you're gonna do that.
for a charged system. We're then gonna go move the power steering pump. I'm gonna pull this directly off the head and block and just ratchet strap it to the side of the fender here somewhere, and we'll reinstall that on the motor that's gonna be going in the truck. That's just so we don't need to bleed the system and get all that ATF and power steering fluid junk all over the place and all over the engine. So that will be the next steps there. We need to make sure we disconnect our oil sending unit for our dash indicator. Make sure that when you go to put these back on, there's a nub right on the top. It looks like a little top hat. That's where it needs to be connected, not the little tab here that looks suspect, like that's where you need to plug it in. You will blow out your oil pressure gauge if you do that. I'm going ahead and taking the AC compressor off the 3FE, and that is because there is a chassis ground that's under there that is for the battery. So we've removed it. It's 4 12mm bolts there, bolts to this beautiful bracket here. That right there is our ground for our motor. So we're gonna get that all disconnected and pull this thing on out of here. So now we're working on getting this power steering pump off. It's usually held on by 3 14mm on the side of the head, and it should come free. The reason doing this, again, we are gonna try to make this as easy as possible. We don't wanna have to re-bleed the system. So as you can see here, those bolts pop off, and we can kind of strap this down to the side of the fender here. For the most part, this side of the motor is all complete and all butterflied the way I want it to be. We have our power steering pump off, our motor mount bolt off. We just need to dive under the truck, get our bell housing bolts from that side, as well as our starter disconnected, and we'll be good on this side. Moving over to the driver's side, you can see there's a lot of stuff missing here. All the smog stuff is gone on this truck. I eliminated that a long time ago. So normally you would have a spaghetti mess right here, EGR valve, et cetera, et cetera. We are going to be probably adding a little bit of that stuff back because it helps with some of the fueling. We're gonna have to go under the truck and disconnect our downpipes here, which are 4 14mm. Be careful with those, prone to breakage. So we don't want to do that if we want to reuse these manifolds and not have to put new bolts in them. We've already gone ahead and disconnected our alternator, as well as there's a little sneaky under here motor mount bolt as well. Again, dive under there, 2 more bell housing bolts on that side, and we should be good to pull this old fella out of here. The bell housing bolts are out. Slave cylinder bolts are out. I forgot there is a ground down there next to the starter that needs to be disconnected that goes to the frame. I also forgot on a 62, unlike the 60 series, is that there is a return line, and I did forget to unhook that. Now we are all unhooked, free from the 60 series. Let's go ahead and get this thing all pulled out of here. It's been a while since I pulled a 62 motor out of one of these things, and I forgot. They're computer operated and they have injectors, no carburation. So I forgot to unhook the main line that goes to the injectors and goes to the firewall right here. So we need to go into the cab and get that all disconnected from the actual computer, and so we can lift this all out. I also forgot to disconnect the fuel line that goes to the fuel filter here on the actual wheel well. But she's almost out of there. If you're looking for the ECU on a 62, it sits below the actual glove compartment right here. You can see here that there are some plugs that go into the side here on the left side. There are only 2 plugs, these right here, if you can see that, a medium-sized one and a smaller one that need to be disconnected. And then they should go right through that hole I showed you on the firewall. This is the larger of the 3 plugs that stays put. Should be able to pull right through. Yay, our 3FE is out of our 62 and our engine bay is ready for some light cleaning before our used motor goes back in. One thing I do want to note is that if you ever have a torque issue where you kind of hear the fan on the front of the motor hitting the fan shroud, it's usually one of the big issue, and that is that this motor mount here on the driver's side is usually bad. And guess what? Whoops, she is gone. So that's not really holding on anything. The passenger side is all good. You can fix that if the motor is in the truck still. You're just gonna have to jack up that side on the oil pan. Kind of a dicey job, but it can be done. But that needs to be replaced before this motor goes back in.
Next task at hand is, cleaning up this engine bay that has 300,000 miles worth of grime on it, which I was a little skeptical about doing because this is a personal truck. It's not really something I'm gonna be selling, but I do want to showcase, the work that's been done, right? So we're gonna be in there for the next couple hours of our lives, just living our best life, just getting filthy and grease and grime, using a little Simple Green to get it all off. Well, the engine bay looks pretty damn good. And basically I'm calling this the Landcruiser hot tub because I'm soaking wet. Not because there's water in there, it's because it's 105 degrees inside this building. But the engine bay is clean now. Man, brightens up like getting a teeth cleaning at the dentist. Introducing the 3FE that's gonna be going in the white 62. This is a used 3FE that I pulled out of a parts truck a few years ago. I do wanna note a few things about this motor before we start swapping some parts over. Number one, off camera, I bought the TLC Performance Desmog kit that we've already gone ahead and put on already. That includes also taking the intake off. You gotta plug the smog rail, and you do that by taking this guy off here. When this is off, it's very important to note, if this motor is going into an 88, you need to make sure that you have an 88 wiring harness for the injectors, as they are different to the 89. The motors aren't different, but the connectors are slightly different. You either chop those and resolder them in, or just switch out the wiring harness, and that's easiest by taking this intake off. After, we're gonna be putting on the bell housing back here. When you do that, you need to make sure that you buy a pilot bearing. I bought mine for a 1987 FJ60. That needs to be tapped into the back of here so that your transmission input shaft will seat up correctly. Now we have all the pleasurable, exciting experience of switching all the old parts off this tired 3FE onto this one. Yeah, let's do it. Here's that 89 engine wiring harness. You can tell it's a little different because of the gray stuff that goes to the ECU. Usually on the 88, they're yellow. Moving over to the motors, we have this intake all off. This is the best way that I've found to kind of access that stuff. Here's that smog rail, gives you plenty of room to kind of get a wrench in there. Of course, it's a little tight and it'll be a lot different when it's in the vehicle, but I just have it all stationary there, unbolted. We're gonna put that all back on for the time being so we know where everything goes. And we're gonna be pulling this harness off, even though this motor is from a 1989. It's because some of the wiring that's associated with this has been eaten by mice at some point, and I don't want any issues when we go to have this in the truck. And we're at the home run stretch here with the motor going back in the truck, and that is getting the bell housing, flywheel, and clutch assembly back onto the back of the motor. And then we can slap this thing back in the truck and hopefully drive home before dinner. No chance.
we are ready to get this engine in this old truck. I think she turned out pretty well, considering that it's a used motor. We did a little spit polishing to it, if you know what I mean. But the idea here is this is a truck that I drive and use all the time, so I'm not going for super squeaky clean. I just want it to be usable, and I know this motor is a healthy runner. So let's get it in there, all right?
Well, remember that game, Medal of Honor, the PlayStation 1, way back in the 90s? Well, first-person shooter kind of thing. I just created my own thing called Landcruisers of Honor because this dang motor didn't want to go into this truck to save its life. But after an hour of struggling, I've gotten some medals for getting it bolted to the transmission and motor mounts finally. Now I just gotta remember where everything else goes. Probably should have taken a picture or two. Great.
I did go ahead and buy new gaskets for our exhaust flange down here, and that's 2356-1 is the part number for those. And I got them right at AutoZone. I think they were $4 a piece. Super necessary. I've been fighting with something for quite a few minutes here, and I want to highlight it in this video, and that is the tensioner for the AC compressor. Unlike a 60 series, it's a little different in the 62. So the compressor is bolted to a bracket that is bolted to the side of the block here. It is 4 12mm long bolts, which you'll see in a clip previous to this. And then we have the tensioner, which is right here. You have to loosen this bolt on the actual pulley to get it to move up and down. And then there's a bolt that goes all the way up, 14mm. It's very long. And out of the truck, I have that bracket right here. This is the bolt here, and you need to tighten it up into a little nut up here, and that's what will get your movement. Then you need to tighten this pulley back down on the front 14mm to get it to stay there and get that belt absolutely tight. As you see, this moves up and down to get you that tension. Just a pain in the butt, and one of those little things that if you haven't done it before or in a long time, it's just being cranky.
Finally, a few days later, missing critical meals, lunch, dinner, all that jazz, and my back just barking at me. This truck is all back together. I'm ready to turn the key. There was only one casualty putting this whole thing back together, and that was I broke a manifold stud off when I was putting the exhaust back on. So that's gonna have to be drilled out at some point. It's not gonna be today, so we can get that bolted up correctly. But other than that, we just gotta slap battery on it, just got fluids, turn the key, and pray that something good happens, and anything's better than a blown up motor that was sitting in here a couple days ago. So let's go scrounge around for a battery so we can turn this thing over.
All right, she's running. That's great. Unfortunately, the idle is extremely high, and I have a feeling that is our accelerated cable right here. Also have an exhaust leak. You can hear it when you're hitting the gas pedal because
of that freaking stud I broke. So that's gonna definitely have to be fixed. Well, let's figure out this idle issue.
The idle can be adjusted right here. There is 2 nuts that hold the actual accelerator cable to the butterfly valve, which is right here. So as you can see, that kind of moves back. A lot of times this is not adjusted correctly, so we just need to adjust it out to let this accelerator cable relax a little bit. Nice and smooth. A little adjustment and this motor pick and runs amazing, like a sewing machine. For charging, we got great oil pressure. It's absolutely crazy for me to think that the 62's new beating heart was just one of these engines sitting on one of these rolly carts just a couple days ago. It's absolutely amazing that we were able to pull it out, get it all put back together, and make it mechanically ready to go back in the 62 for her first ride down the road. That's gonna happen right now.
And there you have it. 62 went down the road for the first time in many months, and I think she's got a little bit more power. Nah, who am I kidding? The 62's still slow, but it's amazing. She's back on the road now. I think I'm gonna take her out to the county fair or a car wash or something tonight. I don't know. Gotta get her out there. That's gonna be the conclusion of this episode, guys. Please subscribe to the channel, like and share these videos. And if you need a motor for your own 62, let me know. We'll work something out. Now you got a video on how to do the project yourself. You know what I'm saying? So it's time for me to get on to the car wash. Catch y'all later.